Forget shining armor and royal banquets. Your medieval job interview is a little different. You've just been hired as a jester. Congratulations. Or condolences. Because your new role is to juggle, sing, insult your boss without getting executed, and maybe get catapulted into enemy lines if things go badly. The life of a jester wasn't all bells and jokes, it was politics, danger, and survival dressed in motley. Let's see how you'd make it through 24 hours as the court's fool. So, you've woken up in the Middle Ages, and lucky you. You're not a farmer, a soldier, or a monk. No, your new career path is jester. Congratulations, you're now the official clown of the kingdom. Your job description: make powerful people laugh, spread gossip, juggle daggers, and maybe sing a dirty song or two at breakfast. Easy, right? Except your boss is the king, and if he doesn't like your punchline, you could lose more than just your job. Where did this bizarre career come from? The roots of the jester can be traced back to the comic actors of the Roman Empire. When emperors cracked down on performers, they fled across Europe, spreading their antics. Mix that with the traveling minstrels and storytellers of the early medieval period, and voila, the medieval fool was born. And they weren't just a European thing. China, India, and other cultures had their own versions of licensed clowns. Turns out, humanity has always needed someone to make fart jokes at royal banquets. But here's the thing, being a jester wasn't as simple as putting on a silly hat. There were actually two types of fools. The first were natural fools, people with physical deformities, mental disabilities, or just eccentric personalities. Nobles found them amusing and often took them in, dressing them in motley and parading them around court. It sounds cruel, and it was, but for some families, giving up a child as a fool meant financial relief, since the noble household would at least feed and clothe them. Then there were the artificial fools, the professionals. These were the sharp-witted performers who could juggle, sing, mimic, and roast their audience without losing their heads. Unlike natural fools, they weren't pitied. They were respected, sometimes even feared. A good jester could make or break reputations with a joke, and they had the rare privilege of speaking truth to power as long as it was wrapped in humor. This was known as the jester's privilege, and it meant they could tell the king he was being an idiot, and get away with it most of the time. What made the role fascinating was that jesters could come from anywhere. Unlike peasants chained to their family trade, a sharp tongue or a knack for slapstick could catapult you into royal circles. You might be a peasant's son, a failed monk, or even a disgraced clerk, but if you could make a duke laugh until wine came out his nose, you had a shot at a cushy position in court. In a rigid society where almost no one escaped their birth status, jesters were the rare exception. So your morning as a jester isn't just about jokes. It's about survival. You've got to read the room, know when to perform, and know when to shut up. Make the nobles laugh and you'll be rewarded with food, clothes, maybe even land. Cross the line and you'll be back in the gutter. Or worse. Being a fool wasn't just about being funny. It was about being clever enough to live another day. By evening, the laughter fades, and you start to remember that being a jester wasn't all cap and bells. It was dangerous work, and more than one fool ended their career with a broken body, or no head at all. Let's start with the obvious. Bad jokes could kill you. Yes, you had jester's privilege, but that privilege ended the second your patron stopped laughing. One insult too sharp, one jest too close to the truth, and suddenly your motley tunic wasn't protection, it was a target. A peasant might get whipped for disrespect, but a fool could be beaten, exiled, or even executed if their performance crossed the line. It was comedy with a sword hanging over your head. Then there was the charming tradition of don't shoot the messenger, unless it's the fool. Jesters often carried messages into battle, and they were technically supposed to be spared as sacred non-combatants. In practice, not so much. If the opposing general didn't like the message, they might catapult the fool straight back to camp. Sometimes literally. Chronicles tell of jesters being loaded into trebuchets or sent back as severed heads. Imagine clocking into work and realizing your evening shift might involve being medieval artillery. The life of the natural fool was even grimmer. Many of them were people with disabilities or deformities, taken from poor families and kept at court for amusement. At first, they might be treated with a strange mix of pity and curiosity, fed, clothed, maybe even indulged. But once they stopped being funny, many were simply cast out. Without the protection of their patrons, these ex-fools often ended up as beggars, mocked by the same crowds that once applauded them. Their jester's privilege expired the second they were no longer entertaining. Even the clever artificial fools weren't immune to misfortune. Some were dragged into politics, whispering advice into kings' ears one day and blamed for bad decisions the next. If the king lost a war, it was easy to accuse the fool of poisoning his judgment with sarcasm and songs. The same sharp wit that kept them alive could just as quickly turn into a death sentence. And yet, some jesters leaned into the danger. Take Taillefer, the Norman juggler who allegedly rode into the Battle of Hastings singing the Song of Roland while juggling a sword. He didn't just cheer on the troops. He killed an Englishman before being cut down himself. Or Roland the Farter, who made a career and earned land with his signature routine. A jump, a whistle, and a fart. Absurd? Yes. But it kept him in the king's favor. So as night falls, remember, being a medieval fool was less about comedy and more about survival. You weren't just juggling balls, you were juggling life and death, one joke at a time. Night falls, and your day as a fool is nearly done. You've survived the jokes, the insults, and hopefully avoided being catapulted across a battlefield. But here's the thing. The jester's influence didn't end when the torches went out. Their legacy outlived them, shaping both medieval life and the centuries that followed. For starters, jesters weren't just entertainers. They were organizers. During Christmas and winter feasts, they often played the role of the Lord of Misrule, running holiday chaos like a medieval party planner on steroids. They arranged games, led carols, staged mummers' plays, and made sure the nobles had plenty of reasons to drink themselves into questionable decisions. In some households, this reign of misrule lasted not just 12 days, but months. Imagine your boss putting you in charge of the office Christmas party, and the kingdom's reputation depended on it. No pressure. Jesters also worked as a kind of royal pressure valve. Medieval courts were tense places filled with politics, fear, and flattery. Most people told kings exactly what they wanted to hear. But the fool, he, or sometimes she, could crack a joke that revealed uncomfortable truths. Wrapped in humor, criticism slipped through where sermons or lectures never could. In many ways, jesters were early spin doctors, shaping decisions from behind the mask of folly. And some fools turned this privilege into real power. Rahere, a witty entertainer to King Henry I, went on to found London's Saint Bartholomew's Hospital after a vision during a pilgrimage. Others used their positions to secure land, wealth, or lasting influence for their families. Even the ridiculous ones like Roland the Farter earned estates and incomes just by keeping their monarchs amused. That's right. In the Middle Ages, fart jokes could pay better than farming. The jester's image stuck too. By Shakespeare's time, the fool had become a stock character. Part comic relief, part philosopher. Think of the fool in King Lear or Fest in Twelfth Night. They laugh, they sing, but they also deliver the deepest truths in the play. That tradition comes straight out of the medieval court where folly and wisdom went hand in hand. And here's the irony. For a role built on being ridiculous, the jester might have been the wisest person in the room. They could insult kings, comfort peasants, critique politics, and survive in a world that crushed almost everyone else into silence. So, you've made it through your first 24 hours as a medieval jester. You're exhausted. Jingling bells still ringing in your ears, but you're alive. And more importantly, still employed. Congratulations. In a world where honesty could get you killed, you've mastered the art of speaking truth by pretending to be a fool.